what is the greatest, what is the greatest script of all time? Depends on who you ask, because film and art is so subjective. But I think for a lot of people will say the script for Casablanca, not just the movie, not the movie, the script for Casablanca would be in the conversation for the greatest script of all time. The movie is now 80 years old, and it stands the test of time. And I think that's a testament to how great a story is and how great a script is. When it stands the test of time, Casablanca is 80 years old and it's lost none of its power. I remember when I first saw Casablanca, my girlfriend said the same thing. It's, when you first watch it and you're used to watching modern movies, I can't blame you if you find Casablanca boring initially. But I think once you sink into the world, it's a movie where before you sink into the story, you have to sink into the world the story's set in. And I think once the context and the history of the story has sunk in, then you can really sink into the powerful human experience of what's going on in Casablanca. So I think the first most important thing to understand about Casablanca is that it's a story set during the Second World War, and it's before the Americans have got themselves involved in the fight against Germany. The first most important thing to understand about Casablanca, it's a story that takes place in a time in Europe when people were desperate to get out of Europe because Europe was being endangered by the Nazis. The Nazis were overrunning and overruling Europe. Their power was spreading, and people's lives and livelihoods were being endangered. So people were desperate to get out of Europe. And it's important to understand Casablanca. You gotta understand that desperation. The opening of the movie makes it clear, and I think it's a very strong opening. But you gotta let it sink in. You gotta let it sink in so you understand that it's a story about people who are desperate to get out of Europe. And according to the story being told by the movie, the best way to get out of Europe is to go to Lisbon, which is politically neutral. The Nazis at this time have no effect on Lisbon. People want to get to Lisbon because from Lisbon it is relatively easy, maybe not easy, but it's relatively possible to get from Lisbon to America. So people want to get to Lisbon. So the story's set in Casablanca. It's a place in Morocco, North Africa, but it's a French colony in North Africa. I've always thought of Casablanca about, you see the poster and it's Bogart and Bergman, and you just think of it as a love story. But it's so much more. To really understand how great the love story is, you got to understand the world the love story is taking place in. A world endangered by the Nazis. A world of fear and trouble. I've always thought that Casablanca was a beautiful name, but when you understand the story, it's not necessarily a beautiful place. Casablanca is a place where people are stuck in. The opening of the movie, it says that people are waiting. It's a place where people are waiting because they're stuck and they're desperate to get out. And there's a beautiful scene at the start of the movie where there's a plane flying to Lisbon, and you see these people looking up at this plane flying to Lisbon, and you see the look in people's eyes. And this happens before the love story. Before you meet Bogart, before you meet Bergman, there's this beautiful shot of people looking at this plane flying to Lisbon. And that plane is literally it's their hope of the future. Without that plane, without the hope of them getting on that plane, these people have no future because of the Nazis. So you gotta understand, people want to get on that plane because getting on that plane is their only hope of getting out of Europe and getting away from the Nazis. To understand the movie, you gotta understand that is what people are hoping for, to get on that plane and get out of Casablanca. Casablanca is a place that people want to get out of.